Welcome to episode 187 of the forestallover podcast. We've got Andrew in Wisconsin, Homer in Ohio, Richard all the way over in Oklahoma, various different time zones. I'm here in Dublin. Today we're going to talk about the thumping we gave Brighton this weekend, which was a fantastic response to the Bournemouth loss. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Nottingham Forest North America fan group, the meetup that they're having in Ohio, and maybe a little bit of transfer activity or lack of, and what an amazing season it's been so far. But without further ado, we'll do our Forest all over the world section and we'll hit the music. We've got Oliver Haig in Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon in Vietnam. Massive shout out to Oliver. He's been on the podcast before when he was living in China. We've got Ali Barron, who said, what a night for the NFFC Melbourne Supporters Club meetup on Saturday night. Great to see so many old and new faces. Well done. Another month again. Any Forest fans in Melbourne interested, check that Facebook group out. And Dubai Trickies. I know Chris Walsh has his own Dubai Trickies podcast. They did one recently with Samit Patel. So massive shout out to them. Check that one out. And yeah, without further ado, I'll bring in the guests while they're already here. We'll start with you, Andrew. It's been a long time coming. I've been trying to get you on the podcast for a while. I remember distinctly talking to Brian from NFFC Chicago, Ryan Barstow Chief from Chicago as well, and Dan, who was based in New York about a year or two ago, and they were always mentioning your name, saying, this guy Andrew, he helped out, he does a lot of work, and I never managed to get you on, so welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here, thank you. Glad we could finally figure it out.
Yeah, delighted. And so obviously you're busy all the time. We nearly crossed paths at the Ipswich game. Tell us a little bit about sort of Nottingham Forest North America fan group, and we'll go into it a little bit later after we've done some of the Brighton stuff. But tell us a little bit about your involvement with it.
Sure. So if you think back to sort of pre-NFFCNA days, it was a guy called Sean, based out of St. Louis. He was running NFFC USA, did a phenomenal job. He set up the first meetup that we did in Chicago. Well, actually, there was a meetup before that. There was a meetup in Atlanta I think it was in 2018, and then the one in Chicago in 2019. After that, his personal life was kind of getting too much, so he decided he wanted to hand over the reins. So a collection of us, it was between myself, Carl Hudson, Dan White, Nigel Storr, and Jordan Thielen in Toronto, all decided, well, we'll give this a crack and we'll see what we can do with it. And it's kind of grown out from there. So it varies from day to day, from week to week, kind of who's not necessarily in charge, but who's, doing different things, because we're all kind of got our own personal private lives and whatever. At the moment, I know Dan is over in New Jersey. He's busy with his things. I know Jordan's got his own personal things going at the moment. So at the moment, I'm kind of trying to kind of take the lead for a little bit. But other than that, it's a collective group effort. So, I think we're good. I think we've got some really good people behind it. We've got a phenomenal community just by virtue of Richard and Homer being on the podcast alone. We're spread so far and wide nowadays that it's got its own momentum now. It doesn't need people behind it. The strength of NFFCNA is the community, not one person or a name behind the desk. I always like the comparison that Cloughie used to make, and Peter Taylor, that Cloughie was the goods in the front and Peter Taylor was which way around was it? Peter Taylor was Cloughie was the shop front and Peter Taylor was the goods in the back. So that's all of us. We're the goods in the back. We're not doing anything for show. We're not doing this for recognition. We're doing it because it's an incredible community supporting an incredible club, and just seeing how far and wide that goes. That's the reward. Is just seeing this community grow and thrive. So yeah, it's been a great few years, being able to help out.
Amazing. No, it has. And just to touch on sort of my personal experience with it, was when I was living in Toronto, I didn't know there were all these fan groups around the USA at the time. And I know they've grown now and they're much bigger, but NFFCNA was already around by then. I didn't even know there was a Toronto Trickies till 4 years into living there, when Matt, my co-host, and my wife found the group and said, look, we're going to watch this Leeds game down in Toronto. We were living in Hamilton at the time. So it was just, and then I unearthed all this and we did the podcast, and it's just been amazing. So to see the people behind it is fantastic. You're having a meetup in Ohio. Yeah, go ahead.
You touched on a really good point there about what our original kind of MO when we built NFFCNA and what the main focus of what we wanted to do. And it was bringing people together. It was exactly that. I remember it was last spring, sitting on the side of the City Ground pitch talking to the club. I was being interviewed for a piece on NFFCNA, and I said, the whole point of NFFCNA is bringing people together. You might be in a bar or you might be in Boston and you want to see a game, but you don't know anyone else there. So put a shout out, let us know. We'll put something on social media and we'll find somebody to go and watch the game with you. And then, you become friends and then you start a group and then that 2 grows to 3, 4, 5 and it builds and it gets bigger and bigger. And that's exactly what we've seen from the interactions on social media, from email, from Facebook, from the WhatsApp group that we've got that's absolutely thriving. I know, Chris, you're on there. I know, Richard and Homer, you're on there as well. On a match day, that group is electric. There's so much chatter going back and forth. It's like you're literally in a pub talking to people, without actually being there face to face. It's literally exactly what we wanted to do, which was bring people together. I tried to draw up a list of how many groups we have now. I'm not going to read it out, but just looking at that list from like the small origins of when we started to what it is now, it is incredible how much we've grown. Obviously, the Premier League exposure gives you that platform, but just seeing how much it's grown internally and externally, it's phenomenal. Chris, it's phenomenal.
It is, and I'll bring Richard and Homer in a second to talk a little bit of this. I suppose we'll do NFFCNA now because we're there, and we'll talk about the Brighton game a bit after. But just the thing that grasped me when I started doing the Forest All Over the World podcast or Forest All Over podcast was, and if we ever stopped doing this podcast weekly for whatever reason, we would probably continue on the Instagram or Twitter or social media stuff just to help promote fans in different parts of the world. But the thing that grasped me was I was looking to follow all the Forest fan groups from around the world because that was kind of part of our brand. And every day or week, a new one would come up. I couldn't find them fast enough. And then we started getting messages from people. And I know NFFCNA's Twitter handle and us, or X handle, work together in tandem, sort of like trying to put people together whenever they're going on a trip somewhere in North America. And they're like, oh, I'm going to Texas. Is there anywhere to watch the game, etc.? And I just find that really cool. I grew up in Ireland in a place where I didn't really know any Forest fans. And I wish I could find at least one. There are loads, obviously, but I just didn't when I was younger know any. And then I went to North America and all these fans popped up from everywhere and all these fan groups, so it was just really, really cool. Ohio are hosting the Nottingham Forest North America meetup, or one of them this year. I know they're gonna have 2 probably. Homer, you're at the forefront of Ohio Trickies. Are you looking forward to hosting this? Are you a bit nervous? Are you thinking there's going to be a lot of people there? What's the date and when is it and what's it all about?
So the meetup is April 26th, end of April. We're super excited. We're excited to have however many people want to show up. We want them there. I know the Chicago one a couple of years ago, was, I don't know, 40 or 50 people probably, Andrew. I mean, it was a blast. That was one of the best weekends I've had in a while. So we're very excited. Combustion is super excited. The bar we watch the games at, they're gonna promote it too. We gave them a heads up. There'll be a lot of people here April 26th. So. And we're also looking at possibly getting group tickets to the Columbus Crew. They play that Saturday night. So it should be a super fun weekend for everybody who can make the trip to Columbus. We're excited to have everybody for sure.
Yeah, it's class, Homer. And do you know what I find really cool about it is I have had you on the podcast a few times before. I had Dave and Jacob, who were, they were pushing Ohio Trickies at the time a couple of years ago when they first started it. Or you guys first started it. And the thing about Ohio is, like, you always see there we go. Andrew's putting up for all your listeners a little sticker of Ohio Trickies there. For all the fan groups, there's always different traits to each one. Toronto Trickies has their own thing. New York, LA, Chicago. Ohio always had this like brewing kind of vibe. I think you made your own beer at one point, didn't you, Homer?
Yeah, we did. And we might be getting something going for the meetup. Don't quote me on it yet, but we are in discussions with Combustion to see if they can do a little something special for us.
That would be very cool. Yeah, no, I just think that it's just so cool to have different locations in North America and meetups and people traveling down and going to see these things. I just think that's such a cool thing. A lot of people, Matt, my co-host, was talking to me in the last podcast saying he would love to just fly over, almost like those weekends in Vegas, except it's a weekend thing for Nottingham Forest fans, and they've all gone pretty well. I don't think any of the meetups have had any losses so far. I think one of them was Nashville, who beat West Ham at the beginning of last year. I think it was a draw in Chicago. So yeah, hopefully we beat Brentford that day. Richard, you're heading to Ohio, and are you traveling with any of the other Texas Forest alum?
Yeah, the plan is hopefully to be traveling with Ross Taylor from Austin, Texas, and then Bruce from the DFW area. So we've gotten to be pretty good friends, and just like Andrew has said, that's the goal of these environments, to be able, these groups, to be able to connect with folks and after my granddad passed away, he was kind of like my main connection point to who lived in Nottingham. He lived in Radcliffe. He was actually from West Bridgeford, but originally it was right near the ground, and so lifelong Forest fan and season card holder until he was in his 70s, well into his 70s. He once he passed away, I was like, man, I need some connection. I need some folks that are a part of this great community that is Nottingham Forest, and it was there. It was amazing for people like Andrew and you, Chris and Matt and others, Homer, who have done these kinds of things to build that environment for us. And so I'm so excited. I can't wait. I couldn't believe how excited my wife was for me to go. I don't know what that says, but she was she was actually very supportive. She knows how much this means to me, and so Ross and Bruce and I are just super elated to be participants in it, because I think it's such a great thing. I mean, there's so many Premier League fans in the US, as we all know, but there's just such a beautiful sort of synergy and unity amongst these Forest fans, because we're just not part of the bandwagon that is Man City and Chelsea and Arsenal and all the rest of it, right? We're unique, and so it's a great thing to see this happening. So I appreciate Andrew and NFFCNA and Homer and others that are involved in this. Can't wait to be there. It's going to be awesome to celebrate, because I think we'll win. We're gonna crush those guys. So it'll be great to be together when we watch that.
Very cool, yeah. And it's kind of a cool thing, like thinking about when you told me you were going into the Ohio meetup. I was like, oh my gosh, so they're going to head there together. I almost thought, are they going to do this like road trip thing, like a movie?
We might do that. So I hope Homer and Andrew aren't upset about that, because we kind of want to have a chance to feature NFFC. I mean, you guys do such a great job of doing that on Forest All Over, but it'd be great to also feature it on Talking Reds as well, because I think this is just such an important chapter of our fan base, because it has grown so much. I mean, I've met fans, like I met a guy who lives in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is like an hour and 30 minutes north of here, and he's just became a fan because one of his best friends went to university in Nottingham and came back and was like, caught the bug that is Forest, and just passed it on to him. And now his dad, his name's Jake Kerr, passed it on to his dad, and so they go regularly to a Premier League. I didn't even know this existed, a Premier League sports bar in Edmond, Oklahoma, or in the North Oklahoma City area. And they go and watch Premier League matches, watch Forest matches as much as they possibly can, which is just remarkable, isn't it? I mean, these folks that are like grafted in, they're not expats, they're not family, don't have family there. They just love the culture and love the club and love what we're doing. And this is before, we've done what we've done this season. So it's just a remarkable thing to see how it's taken off. And Taku and others that you've talked to, I mean, who have just gravitated towards our club is incredible.
I think, Richard, you touched on a really good point there about, yes, we're now in the mainstream, we're in the Premier League, and that exposure has spread and got so much broader than it was before. But I also find, you're right, there are these random people that will just like turn on the TV and there's this team playing in red, and they see the City Ground and they hear Mull of Kintyre, and there's a connection there. There's something lights up. It's like lightning in a bottle of, you see something that's so unique and so special, but so legitimate. It's tangible. You can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, and then that's just the surface. And then once you start to scratch that surface and you dig and you find all the history, and there's so many little beats across the entire history of the club, it becomes an obsession. And you can't escape it. The little things that we've done, and the 2 European Cups, that we're famous for that, but that you kind of need to find that. Like, the modern fans won't make that connection because of how the Premier League and the Champions League have kind of evolved and become something different. But then you realize that it's the same thing, and that achievement in some ways was better than winning the Champions League. And I love that about our club, that we are this little provincial team in Nottingham that managed to conquer the world, the rebel city. I love that about us. It's there and it's pure and it's so unique, and that's what makes us special.
You've hit the nail on the head, Andrew, because I was literally just about to talk about how this club is kind of cool, and I know I'm biased in saying that, but we're this kind of cool, culty kind of thing, this sleeping giant, not sleeping anymore, but we were. And a lot of the fans we spoke to over the course of the last 5 years in various different countries all said the same thing. They heard a little bit about the club. They dug into the history a little bit. Robin Hood, Brian Clough, etc., etc. Oh, wow, it's actually a big city in the East Midlands. And that's how they found us. And it became bigger and bigger and bigger. And now a lot of the fans just, even some of the neutral fans find it hard to dislike us. Even though we're doing well now, I think there's a lot of neutral fans like, oh, but we like Nottingham Forest. You know what I mean? There's a cool.
Back in the 70s, we were most fans' second team back in the 70s. I know, like the 80s and the 90s, it kind of changed and we were off the grid a little bit when we were out of the Premier League. But we're getting that reputation again. We're everybody's second team, unless you're a Bournemouth fan.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And the way we play, it's like it's anti everything else, right? I mean, it's just great. I love hearing that our names being touted about as sort of going against the grain. And are we eliminating possession football, like possession based football? It's just it's amazing. But what a time! I mean, you just can't be any more excited. I mean, the 7-0 victory is a whole nother thing we'll talk about in a second. But just what we're doing as a team is it just feels sort of, again, like you said, Andrew, it's sort of fitting into that mold of that Rebel City anti-establishment.
Yeah, well, let's talk a bit about the 7-0 and the anti-establishment football that we're playing, which is just really hurting teams this season and been just so good for us. And a lot of people have said to me, I wasn't a fan back in the late 70s, early 80s, I wasn't around. They've said to me, this reminds me of the counter-attacking football club kind of plays. Homer, we beat Brighton this weekend. We hammered them. I know you and I were both in the same boat sort of last week after Bournemouth. You feel down, it changes your whole mood. It's kind of like a mental shift. You're doing so well. You've had this big game against Liverpool. You hang on against Southampton, and then you lose the way it happened last weekend to Bournemouth. But then to come back, there is no more perfect response than this, is there, Homer? Really, to win 7-0.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, I mean, the 5-0 game against Bournemouth, kind of humbling, but the bounce back the team showed against Brighton was absolutely incredible. I mean, everybody played out of their minds. I mean, 7-0 is just unheard of. I woke up the next day like, was that a dream? I mean, it was fun to watch. And we actually were at a Brighton bar because our Combustion didn't open, so we were around. I mean, they were a great group of people, but by the end of the match, they were ready for us to leave for sure. But
that's class. Sorry, you were, because I saw that. I thought Brighton, the Brighton fans, because I saw that on online. I thought they came to your bar and were kind of cool. Or were you at their bar?
Yeah, we were actually at their bar because since it was a 7:30 local kickoff, so Combustion, they weren't open that early, but the Brighton they opened for us, and they let us there, and then very quickly they want us to leave.
That's fantastic. I actually think, to be fair to the Brighton fans, that's pretty classy of them, the way they behaved. I saw them at the end. They did a picture with you guys, which is kind of cool. And that's kind of what you'd like to see. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, look, they'll be all right, Brighton. They'll be fine this season anyway.
But they were great people. They wished us well the rest of the season, but it's tough watching your team lose 7-0, no matter who it is. So it was fun though. Yeah.
Well, that is class. Richard, this win, it does signify something, doesn't it? A lot of people spoke to me last week about how we lost to Newcastle, Arsenal, and Man City in the space of like 2 or 3 weeks, pretty heavily. 3-0, 3-0, 3-1, and I think we beat Ipswich in between. Andrew and I were at that game, but we bounced back with a massive win streak, and then obviously we lost to Bournemouth. And people saying, "Listen, we can bounce back," and we did. What was so compelling for you about this result? Was it the performance? Was it the goals? Was it Alanga assists? Was it Morgan Gibbs-White's 100th game? What stood out for you?
I think it's just a reinforcement of the kind of mentality we have as a club now. I mean, we're taking the same players, some of the same players that were there and under the Cooper, and this is not meant to be a compare and contrast between Nuno and Cooper. I just think in terms of how we perform as a unit, it speaks to the fact that when we get shellacked as we did against Bournemouth, and we know how frustrating they are as a club for us. I mean, they're reaching, in my own head. Okay, I'm just going to speak personally. In my own head, they're at the top of these bogey teams. They're like the way that Brentford is for Greg Mitchell, right? It's just that I can't stand them, and I just want to beat them so bad. We don't have that opportunity now since we've already played them twice this season. But I think it's just a statement of Forest is not going to be one of these clubs that sort of like drifts into sort of obscurity again, and we just sort of like we get one bad result, and all of a sudden now all the foundation starts to crumble, and the way that we operate starts to dissipate, and that's just not going to work. It's not going to happen. I think the mental fortitude of what we have, starting with our manager all the way through to our players, and to see Morgan Gibbs-White, for me, play like a captain, play like a leader, take what was last week and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take the reins here, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to let this happen again. And, I don't know how cognizant he is of the 100th appearance. I mean, he's my favorite player since Stuart Pearce, as you know, Chris, but it's like, I don't know what his mentality was going into that, other than that, which is I'm going to bring that passion, that energy. I mean, he did it on every level, right? He was tackling well. I think it was 8 out of 10 ground duels that he won. He was switching play like so fluidly and with such precision. He's accelerating to get the ball moving forward, moving into spaces on that pass from Danilo for the first goal. I mean, it was just like, it was the performance you want to see from him week in, week out. And the fact that he's tied his goal output from last season and he's moving his way towards that double-digit number, which is just remarkable to think about, considering all of us were freaking out about where we were going to get goals from this season, aside from Chris Wood, and they're all pitching in. And I think that synergy and that uniformity of purpose and everything is just so, it was on display, and that way that we convert, look at how many shots on target. We had 9 and we converted 7 of them. It's amazing. I mean, that's the way that Forest plays. That is an illustration, a perfect microcosm of who we are and how we're going to win games. Because when we don't do that, we see what happens. It ends up in something like Bournemouth or against Man City or against Arsenal. So hopefully that's a galvanizing moment. It's a catalyst to saying, you know what? We're going to have these off games here and there, but for the most part, we're going to play a consistent brand of football that's going to be very difficult for anyone to deal with. So it was great. That to me is really the end result, is just that mentality being returning.
Absolutely, Richard. I touched on a lot of things there, but I think the thing for me is I almost prefer that we did this. Like, I almost like if we'd lost 1-0 last week to Bournemouth and then we'd gone out and won 1-0 this week, I almost prefer seeing us tested like that. We get beaten 5-0 away at Bournemouth, and I hated it at the time. But to come out and respond like this, it almost feels like, no. We're not just going to peter out the second half of the season. Even if we do get a setback like Bournemouth, we're going to come back and we're going to smash a team, and then we're going to go on and go away to Fulham and Newcastle and give them a good go. So it almost feels better. That's what football is all about, the roller coaster of a season. But for me, Matt Sells, every time we play well in a game anytime we win the game and get to the back end, it always seems like Sells has a couple of really big saves early on. The Wolves game, I noticed he had a couple of big saves, and then we went on to win that 3-0. This game, that tip off the bar from Danny Welbeck's shot, he always seems to have these massive games. And then, people talk about the goals and the assists. And yes, we talk a little bit about Sells, but Andrew, he's been unbelievable this season, Matt Sells, hasn't he?
I think it was incredible that in a game where we won by 7 clear goals, that Matt Sells was legitimately in the conversation for player of the match. I know he wasn't, and you have to give probably Chris Wood or Anthony Elanga because of the hat-trick or the assists, but those saves that Matt Sells made kept us in. I think when Welbeck hit the bar, that was at 3-0. I think at that point it was just before half-time, and the way the game was evolving, I don't think a goal then would have necessarily changed the course of the game, but you don't know. Football's a funny old game, and, they get a goal back just before half-time. All of a sudden, your confidence shifts. It changes. The team talk at halftime. They come out galvanized. They get another goal early in the second half. And we're talking a very different conversation right now. So that save with a few others that he made in the game are incredibly important. Harking back to the Matt Turner days, and I know this came up a lot at the time, and nothing against Matt Turner. He did a phenomenal job. He was a great shot stopper. But I think had we still had Matt Turner in goal for the duration of last season, we would probably be in the championship right now. And again, that's nothing against Matt Turner. He's did an incredible job, but Matt Sells came in and has just been that anchor, that rock. And we talk about the spine of a team, and I know you've probably talked about this on the podcast before. The spine starts with a goalkeeper. You look at the great Forest teams over the history. Let's talk about the greatest of all time, that team in the 70s. It all started from having a keeper at the back in Peter Shilton that you trusted implicitly to keep you in games. Now, great saves keep you in games. They don't necessarily win you games. You still need to score goals. But you don't lose games if you keep clean sheets. It's a fact. It's pure maths. So having Matt Sells in there, he's what now, 10 clean sheets for the season. He's like the clean sheet leader in the Premier League. That is an incredible statistic for a team like Nottingham Forest, that our keeper, and Matt Sells isn't one of these like glamorous goalkeepers that, all showy, that can dribble the ball out the back, take 10 on, and then Panenka it and past the goalkeeper. He's just solid, and you just trust him. And, him at the back, and then that consistent back four in front of him. You go into games expecting to, at worst, maybe concede 1 goal, and that keeps you in games. And then with the strikers and the attacking options that we've got, and I said this very early in the season, because this was when it kind of clicked to me that this felt like it was going to be a really special season. If you're set up in a way where you're not going to concede many goals and you're capable of scoring goals in every game, that's an absolute recipe for success. Because you're going to be in most games. You're going to tie or win most games. And that's what's happened. And that starts from Matt Sells and being able to be confident that you're not going to concede goals. So, yeah, I don't think he'll be in the shout for player of the season because there's so many other candidates. but he's going to be like Nico Williams last season. He's going to be like the third person on a list of 3 that's probably not going to get it, but absolutely is going to need that recognition, because he's going to be one of the reasons why we achieve what we do this season.
100%. I think he's worth about 12 or 15 points at least this season. I was at a Chelsea away game at the start of the season, and he made a couple of brilliant saves, kept us in it. We were down to 10 men. And I just thought, if he keeps this up, I don't know what I'll do. He's done more than that. The clean sheets, the save percentage, the manner in which we've won certain games. That Liverpool game was ridiculous a few weeks ago. Some of the saves he made. I grew up looking at the flashy attacking midfielder, cool strikers, goals, etc. But I can't ignore it. He will be in the conversation for me for player of the season. But like, sure, look, we'll see how we go at the end if he keeps a few more clean sheets. Go ahead, Richard.
Sorry, guys, got to take off. It's great to be on with you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining. Follow Talking Reds if you can as well. Subscribe to them. Richard jumped in for half an hour. Really appreciate it. I know it's early morning there for you. So thank you. Take care, Richard. Okay.
Thanks, boys. See ya.
Bye. But yeah, sorry, back to Matt Sells. Thanks to Richard, by the way. Everyone follow Talking Reds podcast. He does a great podcast with Greg Orm. They're on YouTube, and yeah, Talking Reds is the name of them. I'll give them the plug there and a shout out. I'll put them in the description as well. So yeah, follow them. But yeah, Sells, Andrew, just back on him. I don't know. I can't get away from how amazing he's playing. Like he's doing Alisson Becker stuff, and it's just. I think
a good compare and contrast with him would be to look at Brice Samba, who, everybody loved Brice Samba. He was fan favorite. He was a little bit reckless though. He was a bit of a loose cannon, phenomenal shot stopper, and he is the reason why we won that game against Sheffield United with that standout performance in the penalty shootout. But the difference in style between Brice Samba, who is a phenomenal goalkeeper, and Matt Sells, they're so far apart in terms of the style of keeper that they are. But I'll ask you this now: if you had a choice between Brice Samba in goal and Matt Sells, who would you choose?
Sells. I mean, because he's doing it in the Premier League to a standard that Samba might have done it. We don't know. I love Samba. He's always going to be one of my favorite goalkeepers. But like, I think the point would be that Sells is the best Premier League keeper. Right? He's playing to the best. He is number one. Like him, Raya, and Alisson Becker are the top 3 right now in the league. That's just a fact. I think
with Sells going into a game, you don't need to worry about Sells having some sort of crazy random one-off moment that ends up costing you a goal or eventually a game. With Brice Samba, as much as I love the guy, you always had that in the back of your head that he was going to, suddenly start a fight with one of the attacking players or score an own goal. Or, there'd just be some crazy moment that was waiting just around the corner. With Sells, you don't expect that. You just expect a solid, very boring but exceptionally controlled and great performance. And I think that's the difference. You just need that calming aura at the back, and then you put Milenkovic, you put Murillo, you put Morato in front of him, and the wing backs as well. That's the best defense in the Premier League, and you can at me on that one. I don't care. That is the best back line across any team in the Premier League, because you trust that most games that you go into, they're going to keep a clean sheet or at least keep you in the game.
Absolutely. And I back you on that. 100% it is. And I think the wing backs is really interesting, because I think Aina is, in my opinion, currently the best right back in the league. I mean, I know people say Trent Alexander-Arnold in terms of but in terms of defensive ability, I think Aina's doing the best right now on form. I know he had a bad game against Bournemouth, but he bounced back really well against Brighton there yesterday. Homer, just to talk a little bit about some of the players that came in yesterday. Morato, Danilo, obviously Danilo, we're chuffed to bits to have him back. How do you think he played yesterday? He was a bit rusty defensively, but going forward, he was such a weapon. I mean, he might slot back into that midfield spot, Danilo. What are your thoughts on him coming back?
I mean, good to see him back. It sucked he got hurt the first game, but I think going forward, he could be a huge piece of this team. I mean, we look great against Brighton, and as he gets his legs under him, I mean, like you said, going forward, I mean, he's incredible, and it kind of makes me not as worried about what sounds like we're not going to really bring anybody else in. But with him back, Sangare is back, he could bring something else that we haven't had. So, I mean, I think we're set at midfield currently, and super excited to see what Danilo can do moving forward the last 14 games.
Yeah, and like, speaking of which, just being set in midfield, Homer, it's transfer deadline day. You'd never know it because nothing's happened. James Ward-Prowse has gone back to West Ham, so that just shows you that we don't feel we need an extra midfielder, because we believe Sangare and Danilo will come back into their own. And Danilo obviously started yesterday, so or the day before yesterday. But transfer wise, you're not concerned about midfield. Skipping to the forward line, did you think of anyone might want to come in? Like I would like a lone backup striker, Homer. I mean, is that something you're thinking of, or would you be happy enough as we are?
Yeah, I mean, I've been hoping we would get somebody just to back up Chris Wood, just in case, the unthinkable happens and he goes down with something. Taiwo hasn't looked the best. I mean, I love him. He's done good stuff for us, but he just hasn't looked up to speed since he came back. So definitely, I was hoping we would go after a backup striker. At least as of now, like you said, anything can happen. We could be shocked, 11th hour, bring somebody in. But I definitely would have liked a backup striker to Wood.
Yeah, and like as you said, anything could happen, Homer. We could get someone in with the next 8 to 10 hours. Who knows with Forest? But it seems like we're trying to keep it calm, cool, and collected, and that makes sense as well. Don't upset the balance. I understand that. If you told me today Chris Wood was going to be fit for the next 14, 15 games, I would say let's just leave it alone. But we just don't know that. And obviously, as you touched on there with Taiwo, like, yeah, his form and his injury issues over the course of the last couple of seasons has affected him, but I still love him. I still back him. I just wonder, Evan Ferguson went out to West Ham. He'll get more minutes there. Obviously, it's under Potter, who's ex-Brighton, but I wonder, would that kind of lone player as an understudy to Wood have been a good option? What are your thoughts on the transfer situation, Andrew? Go ahead, yeah.
I think you look at the squad that we've got. There are options there. I don't think we're quite as razor thin in the front line as it seems. You could move Anthony Elanga in there. You could play Jota in that number 9 role. You could even play Morgan Gibbs-White as like a false number 9 and still find things to do. I think that has knock-on effects throughout the rest of the team. So if you're taking Anthony Elanga out of that wing slot, you need to replace him. And we've still yet to see what Ramon Sosa can do. I like the fact that when we bought a lot of the players that we did, that you had players that were versatile and that could play in different roles across, the team. You've got, excuse me, at the back, you've got, wing backs and full backs. You've got central defenders. Murillo could, be perfectly at ease as a defensive midfielder. But you look at those forward options, yes, Chris Wood and Taiwo Awoniyi, they're straight up number 9s. You could potentially play Morgan Gibbs-White up alongside a striker if you need to. So I think we've got options. I don't think it's quite as bad as it seems if we don't get anyone in. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have liked somebody in, but I think there is that risk of the harmony that you can see. You look at the scenes from the dressing room when they gave Morgan Gibbs-White that signed jersey with the 100 for his 100th appearance. The level of connection that the players have got and that harmony and that team spirit that you see, there is a risk, and there is something to be said for that. That if you bring somebody in, on astronomical wages to try and elevate the team, that it could disrupt things and it could have a negative impact. At the same time, though, you bring somebody in who's on those wages that gets you to that level of being a Champions League team, not even contender, but an actual Champions League team. That could inspire other players to then want to get to that level as well. And, you suddenly start playing at the same level that this player's playing at. You're going to get a new contract. We've seen it happen with Murillo, and we'll probably see it happen with Gibbs-White. You're going to get these next level up contracts that are at that level. We're not a mid-table Premier League that are paying mid-table Premier League wages now. We're a Champions League team. That's what we want to be, and we're going to reciprocate that. We're going to pay that. So if you can earn that and you can play with that level of performance week in, week out, that's the inspiration. That's why you get somebody in at that level. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I don't like going out and buying someone just for the sake of it, and I think we've become very sensible at just buying in the right people. So you kind of have to trust the process. It's done as well the last 12 months that if the right players aren't there and aren't available, or the club or Nuno or EM or whoever doesn't think it's the right fit, then you have to trust them. And there's a bit of hope and a bit of praying that Chris Wood doesn't get injured. But even if he does, I think Taiwo, after a few games, could get back to that level. We've seen before. He's one of these form players that needs to play himself into a bit of form. I know there's been the conversation that even in those little cameos that he's made, that he seems so far off. That's not what we had last time he was around. He needs to play 3 or 4 games to get to that match fitness, that match sharpness. And you saw a bit of it. That cut inside for the Williams goal on Saturday, that was incredible. He deserved a goal out of that. It was a shame he didn't actually get the goal himself. There's bits there that give me a little bit of hope that the only reason we're not seeing the best of him is because we've not needed to see the best of him. And come curtains open and the game when he needs to perform, or 2 or 3 games into a run of performances, I don't think it's a problem. I think he'd still be there. I think you don't just lose it overnight. I think it just needs a run of games. And if it comes to a point where you have to sacrifice 2 or 3 games of other people chipping in, and you mentioned it earlier that we're the second highest team for the number of goal scorers in a team this season. I think only Arsenal and more, who have 14 goal scorers. We have 13 across the team. we're not over reliant on Chris Wood. I'm sure if you take Chris Wood's goals out and you equate the number of points that we got without his goals, that would be a lot lower down. But we can still score goals. It's not like we don't have goals from elsewhere on the pitch. So I'm not concerned. If we don't bring anyone in today, which is what looks like it's going to be the case, I'm absolutely fine with that. Trust the process.
Yeah, and look, I'm fine to trust them because so far the recruitment process in the last couple of windows has been excellent, and I trust them implicitly. But I think my thing, I suppose, is if Wood does go down, he's obviously so effective. But if he does go down and Taiwo comes in, Taiwo has struggled to get a run of games in terms of his fitness. So if he then has 5 or 6 games in a row, his fitness could struggle. I'm just concerned that Taiwo might go down. Then we have no number 9, and then our whole, the rule books of our strategy is kind of out the window. But you know what? Like, we have to trust it so far. We trusted them in the summer when they didn't bring Nketiah in, and look what's happened there. Palace are now back relying on John Paul Mateta to score all the goals for them, and Nketiah hasn't even scored yet, I don't think. I still think he's a very good player, but Wood has gone on to the next level for Forest, and if he stays fit, of course, I think we're in a really good place. I always think about that thing of, this is our chance, this is our moment, we can make Champions League. Should we just get someone in? And I don't mean like a 60 million Cunha or something like that. I just mean, should we get another backup in just in case? But you can't stockpile players. It's a 25-man squad. There's lots of wage structure and stuff that needs to be moved around that I don't understand. So no, I get it completely. Homer, I want to talk a little bit about the season in general before we kind of sign off. You have been a Forest fan for a while now. You've obviously seen us beat bottom of the championship in the Chris Hughton era a few years ago. You've seen us get promoted. I don't think I can describe how it feels, because it feels different for every fan. It feels different for me because I grew up in Ireland around loads of Man United and Liverpool fans. It feels different for Andrew because he's from the Nottingham area, I believe, or from the UK, and he's moved away. For you, you're in Ohio. You're probably surrounded by sort of Man City, Chelsea fans, or whatever, what have you, Man United fans in America. How does it feel having this season? Is it kind of surreal? Like, how have you felt as it's gone on? Do you it's incredible, right?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's been surreal. And, I got friends that are United, City, Chelsea fans, and all season they just keep telling me, you guys are going to fall off. You guys are going to fall off. And I just keep giving it right back to them week after week. Because, we're 6 points clear of 4th place. Like, Champions League is definitely on the table. At this point, I would almost be a disappointment if we didn't make it. But, I'm enjoying the ride.
Just to pick up on something you said there, Champions League, if we didn't make Champions League, it would be a disappointment. How incredible is it to be able to say that, right? And I completely agree with you, it would. I think we'd all understand. I think, one of the things that struck me about how Nuno operates and Cooper kind of, set the seeds for this is everyone's really grounded. There's this level of humility that we're not getting ahead of ourselves. When we lost last week, it was just, we were disappointed. We lost 5-0 to a team that we all, collectively hate more than, most other things. But we didn't let it get us down. You move on. I think even if we don't get top 4 or top 5 or whatever it would be to get those Champions League spots, we all already accept that this has been probably the best season we've had in a generation of fans. And I think even if we don't make it, we'll be disappointed, but for the right reasons. We're not going to, go out there and suddenly start hating the world because we didn't make it. We'll regroup and we'll go again next season. I think that's incredible. And I think that, more than anything else, embodies kind of where the team is, because it's not just off the pitch, it's on the pitch as well. There's this humility and this respect for, the team, the badge, the colours, the city, that we'll just keep going out and we'll just keep going under the radar. And I love that about us as well, that we're still under the radar, that even though, we're legitimately in 3rd place, and like you say, we're 6 points clear of 4th, and we just, thumped Brighton and Hove Albion 7-0 at home, we're still not getting the credit that we deserve. And I love that about it. Keep going under the radar, because the longer we stay under the radar, the better it is, because we're going to keep surprising people, because people will keep underestimating us. And that's where we're at our strongest, is people underestimating us.
100%. And Andrew, the thing that gets me the most is at the start of the season, I think I predicted 14th, 13th. And that was optimistic at the time. A few of my friends who are neutral fans were saying, oh, you're being optimistic there, but fair play. And even if we drifted down sort of in the top 10, it will be a slight disappointment, because we have a chance now to make the European dream a reality. But it's still it is the most incredible season. I started supporting Nottingham Forest in 1996, right? So I was about 9. That season we got relegated, I don't think I had any good seasons other than the Van Hooijdonk year in 98 when we got promoted, and obviously the promotion year under Steve Cooper. And then, the last couple of seasons of survival were fun and interesting in their own way, particularly the one where we beat Arsenal on the final day to stay up, or the second final day to stay up. But for me, this is the best season we've ever had. And it's different for everyone and how they feel. But like, for you, Andrew, it must be, you remember 94, 95. You remember the early 90s when we had Roy Keane, Stuart Pearce. But you remember when Clough was around. How does it sort of match up to that in your mind?
It feels that I think the whole Premier League and the way the game is nowadays, it changes. It's a lot more in your face, like social media and all that kind of thing. You can't escape it. Whereas, I started going in 1988. My first game was I think it was November 88 against Coventry at the City Ground. So I caught, the tail end of that second era of Brian Clough. And I went to Wembley 6 times, saw us win 4 of those games. It was an incredible time to be a Forest fan. I mean, yeah, it's hard to compare because they are different eras and different teams, and the game has evolved. But I think where we're coming from, I think back in the day under Clough, there was an expectation that we were one of the best teams in the country. I think coming into this season, like you say, everyone wrote us off. You watch that 2-minute long clip that's doing the rounds on social media of every single pundit putting us in the bottom 3. That alone elevates this season, more than anything that I saw under Clough, because no one saw this coming. Maybe Nuno saw it coming. Maybe EM saw it coming. I don't know, but that's what makes this season even better, because whatever we do, it's already better than anybody's wildest dreams at the start of the season. And there's a lot to be said about that. So yeah, for me, having been there in, that second, generation of glory days, this is absolutely right up there, if not, the very best season I've seen as well. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And it's just, for the rest of the season now, I suppose, I'm wondering, can we keep this up? And the answer has to be, yeah, we can, because we have. And we went and toe-to-toe with Liverpool, and we bounced back from that loss last week and hammered Brighton at the weekend. And we go away to Fulham, Newcastle. We've Arsenal, City next. We've some difficult fixtures. I'm actually potentially going to that Newcastle game away from home, so I'm flying over for that. Homer, are you what are your thoughts on the next 4 or 5 games? Obviously, it's that kind of difficult run for us. City and Arsenal are going to be hard. Fulham is not an easy place to go. We know that much. We've had some bad results there before. But are you excited to see Forest sort of test themselves away again and get back to the winning ways away from home?
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be a tough stretch. But I mean, City, their defense is bad. I think we can get some from that game. It's at home. Newcastle will be tough, Fulham tough. I mean, Arsenal, we'll see. But kind of like Andrew hit on, I mean, we're playing with house money at this point. Anything moving forward, it's good. So it's going to be a tough stretch, but I think we'll keep getting results. We'll stay in that top 4.
Yeah, and I think that the full Newcastle, interestingly, have lost a couple of home games lately. They lost to Bournemouth, and then they lost this weekend to Fulham. So, and Fulham seem to be not as good at home recently either. They're very inconsistent. They lost to Man United the other week, and Man United aren't really pulling up trees this season. Do you think it's a case of we get through this stretch of the next sort of 4 or 5 games and then weather the storm, and then we get to the back end of the season with Everton, Leicester, Brentford, those games where we can kind of take control then? Or do you think it's just, no, we control our own destiny no matter who we're playing?
I like to think back to December and the fixtures we had in December. And I remember we had these same conversations about how many points would you want to get out of these potential 15 against. And let me just bring that up the list of who we played in December. So we played Manchester City away, United away, Villa home, Brentford away, Spurs home, Everton away. So out of those 18 points, if you were asking me the question kind of in mid-November, how many points would you want to get out of those games? You're probably being conservative and saying, you maybe pick up a couple of wins. You're probably going to lose a couple of those games and a couple of draws. We ended up winning 5 of those games, from what I remember. Let me just double check the result. We lost to City in the first game, and then we went on that tear where we beat United away. We beat Villa at home. We beat Brentford away without conceding a goal. We beat Spurs at home, and then we beat Everton away. So we won 5 out of 6. So you still have to measure expectations. I think, yeah, they're still difficult games in the run that we've got coming up, but there's absolutely nothing based on what we've seen this season to think that we can't compete and be in with a shout at winning any of those games. We are capable this season of beating anyone. If we show up and if Nuno keeps, getting his tactics right and the players, stay well drilled and stick to the roles, all those cliches that we keep hearing about that they've been doing game in, game out with, a few exceptions, we can beat anyone in this league. So without getting carried away, because again, part of that grounding is not going into a game expecting to win. And Nuno says this in his press conference. You don't go into a game expecting to win. You go into a game expecting to compete. And if you compete, you give yourself a chance at winning. I think we've got a chance at competing in every single game we play for the rest of the season.
Love that. And I think you're right. And I think it is a sort of a control your own destiny situation. Ryan Barstow Chief always said that. He said, we are a master of our own destiny. It's up to us. We go out there and we choose. I remember there was a famous saying about a tennis player, Marat Safin. Only Marat Safin can beat Marat Safin. On his day, he could beat Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal or all the best tennis players, but only he could beat himself. And I think that's the case with us this season. When we switch it on, everyone is up for grabs. Every single team this season we can beat. Liverpool haven't beaten us this season. They played us twice. They haven't been able to do it. They haven't lost a league game except for the one against us. So it just shows you who we are,
And it's such an easy conversation to have in the dressing room. You say, this is what you've got. If you can stay drilled, you stay disciplined, you keep doing what you've been doing for the rest of the season. Look at where it's got us now. We're third place in the Premier League. We're 6 clear of 4th. What you've been doing has got us to where we are now. If you keep doing it, there is nothing to suggest that we can't either stay there or even get higher. So the motivation's there, and it's really easy. It's literally pinning up, a newspaper in the dressing room saying, this is what you've done so far. Keep doing it because you're getting the rewards. It's there. It's tangible. You can see it.
Yeah, no, 100. And it's, what's amazing is all those players that will be looking at that are players that felt like a lot of them felt like their other clubs didn't really want them. Hudson-Odoi, Elanga, Aina, even Gibbs White to a certain degree with Wolves, Chris Wood, they would have felt like, listen, we're in a point in our career where we have to do something. And they've come collectively together as this band of sort of not misfits, so to speak, but lads with chip on their shoulders ready to go, look, we are class. We can do this together. And I suppose that's why we talk about not upsetting the harmony by bringing in any big star transfers. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just class. I'm just going to end it now with some plugs and goodbyes and stuff, because I know you guys, it's morning time over there for you both. So I really appreciate your time. Richard's obviously already gone. Homer, give a big shout out to sort of where you watch the games in Ohio. A couple of plugs for some people that that watch the games with you, and then obviously just one more for April the 26th, the Nottingham Forest North America Meet Up. Give a big plug for that as well if you can.
Yep, like I said, we watched games at Combustion Brewing. Huge shout out. They love us there. They open for pretty much every match except 7:30 like this past week. But I mean, like I said, they're super welcoming. Shout out, Dave, Jacob, the other two who started this crazy thing with me. It's grown so much over the past few years. It's kind of like we talked about earlier. Incredible to see these groups keep popping up. I think in the last month, there's a new one in Boston, North Carolina. They just keep popping up all over the country, and it's great to see. It's like Andrew said, the community that surrounds this team, and the people you meet and the friends you make. It's just great.
Class. Thanks, Homer. Be sure to check out the meetup in Ohio, April 26th if you're down there, or if you're doing a road trip like Richard is with Ross and Bruce from Texas and Oklahoma. If you're doing a road trip down there for the meetup, that'll be great as well. April 26th, Brentford. Look up NFFCNA online, check it out. Andrew, I'll end with you. I've tried to have you on the podcast, I think maybe several times, and it hasn't worked out. Your schedule is very, very busy. You lead a busy life and you do a lot for Nottingham Forest North America. I noticed the club has done quite a lot for you. Obviously your family as well. Do you want to touch a little bit on sort of what the club means to you, what it's done for you, and then any plugs?
Yeah, I go back to that time when I was sat being interviewed at the side of the pitch, and I said, the move abroad, there's 4 things that I miss from living in America versus when I lived in the UK. It's family, it's friends, it's certain types of food, but for me, the single biggest, most important thing that I miss is my football club. It's Forest. I've been going, over 35 years. It's literally part of who I am. When I moved to America, I made sure that was the one thing that I didn't leave behind. I get up, whatever time of day it is, if it's a 6:30 kickoff central, if it's 9 o'clock, whatever, I will make sure that I watch every single game live on the TV if I can. The club itself and how they've and not just the club, but the fans as well, the community. We talk about community, the community itself and the Forest family. going all the way back to 2016 and the players and the Henry Lansbury connection, and how that then led to the mascot appearance, and then how, over the course of those few weeks when that happened, how the fans kind of, reacted to that and brought us in. And ever since then, it's just been a constant roller coaster of love and affection. And, every positive superlative that I can think of, that's, the reactions that I get. So I was back again recently, obviously for slightly unfortunate reasons with my dad's health situation. I was able to sort out time for my dad, to have a couple of very special experiences at the club. We may not get those chances again. So the fact that the club are able to do that and keep doing that, it's not that it happens and then it stops. For me, I've been incredibly lucky that, I keep getting these opportunities. I owe the club so much, and the club owes me absolutely nothing. The community as well. I was speaking to Nick Randall at the side of the pitch when we were doing the Home for Christmas launch, and I said to him, now I'm here in America and I'm doing this Nottingham Forest North America thing. I'm trying to give back. I'm trying to spread the word, and I owe this club so much that if I can just bring two fans together to watch a game, that's a little bit. I'm trying to do more than that. Don't get me wrong, but every little thing that I do is in payment back to what the club has given me, because the club has given me everything and I owe it so much. So yeah, it's hard to say, what I mean? It's your life. You know this, Homer, you know this as well. It's, you wake up in the morning and one of the first things you think is Forest is, and you go on social media and you check, what's going on with the club, or you wake up on a Saturday and first thing is to put the TV on and watch the game and get the team news. It's part of who you are. And I'm no different. There's probably countless, dozens, hundreds, thousands of other stories just like mine as well, where the club means so much to you. So beyond just my own personal experiences, this season, it feels like everything's coming together. And there's not been a bad moment. So, I mean, there have been bad moments, but collectively, where we are now, it feels like everything's kind of, getting to that crescendo, to that point where we're getting it. It's there. We're Nottingham Forest. We're a rebel city. We're this tiny little town in the middle of England that rose up and conquered the world. And I said that earlier, but we're there, and people are suddenly starting to see us again and see us. What this awesome, cool, amazing collective of fans, players, the club, the history, what we actually are and what we represent. And it feels so damn good, doesn't it? It feels good. Like I say, I've never been happier as a Forest fan. I've had some great moments. So this season, hopefully it carries on that way, and it's one for the ages. Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, one for the ages, but that's fantastic there, Andrew. And by the way, you said the club doesn't owe you anything. We all owe you a lot. I know you do a lot behind the scenes, and I know you don't take enough credit. I've spoke to a number of people who've said the same thing. So thank you from me. A lot of people who are living in North America or around the world who are Forest fans, you do a lot for this club. So I really appreciate you. Homer, I appreciate you as well. You've built a community down in Ohio, and now you're hosting a Nottingham Forest North America meetup. And Richard, who was on earlier, has his own podcast, and he's really doing a lot of outreach with Forest fans in North America as well. So to all three of you that were on today, thank you so much, and follow us at NFFC all over on X, or at Forest all over on Instagram. Alternatively, you go to forestallover.com. This is a season for the ages, as Andrew said. Go on the Forest, you Reds.
You Reds.